The basic principle or idea behind any good music, or any other form of art in general, is to tell you a compelling story. Music utilizes many different tools in its storytelling, such as different choice of instruments, the way that melody progresses and evolves, or stays the same for that matter. Another tools include rhythm, the usage of simple harmony to evoke stability, or opting for more complex and rich harmony, creating tension, with a need for a proper resolution. All of these aspects and many more contributes to the overall message that the piece is trying to convey. Music for movies and video games is often seen as merely a complement, an extension that just supports the main medium that we are being presented. But this cannot be further from the truth. Good music could and should be able to stand on its own. What we hear can convey just as many emotions as what we can see on a screen. In context of video games and films, music acts as a second form of art that intertwines the former one. They support and they develop each other to create something magnificent. Both medias can stand on its own, but they work best when they are combined. Today, we're going to take a look at a character from a popular video game, League of Legends, and showcase how its theme music fleshes out its story, or at least sets up expectations and foreshadows the general nature of that character. Today, we're going to take a look at Kindred, the Ethernal Hunters. The reason why I chose Kindred for this video, out of all the 160 plus something champions that League currently has in its roster, is because this character really stands out to me. One reason for that is of course because I enjoy playing them. Their mechanics are really fun, their playstyle is quite unique, but this isn't all. That really captivates me and makes me want to play them again and again. Gameplay is one thing, but what I think what really makes Kindred stand out and make them my favorite champion is the vibe that the character gives. It's the little things, the things that casual player might not even notice or pay much attention to it. It's the look of the character, the mask hiding Lamb's face, making him seem emotionless, which he actually is, which we will get into it a bit later. The constant look of anger on Frill and Wolf's face, the kinda uncanny, jumpy movement of the lamb, and the floating, shadowy presence of the wolf. Their in-game voice lines are amazing as well. While they are fighting, the wolf gives these threatening lines.
Run if you can! No! Thrash! Flee!
While the lamb is basically nonchalant about killing someone.
Sometimes death is a blessing. All life is temporary.
But what I love the most are the dialogues that these two entities constantly have.
Are you there, dear wolf?
I am, little lamb.
Are you sad?
I am.
What does it feel like?
A long hunt with no kill.
Of course, to fully understand these quotes, we need to understand who Kindred actually are and what they represent. So without further ado, let's dive into Kindred's story. Runeterra, the fictional world of League of Legends, is fully fleshed out and it is masterfully crafted. It has its own regions, cultures, politics, and economics. It has a very rich and far-reaching history, and it has its own legends and tales, one of which is that of Kindred, the manifestation of death, a grim reaper of sorts. Every living creature in Runeterra is going to meet these two entities sooner or later, at the brink of their life. And depending on how they accept the inevitable, Kindred will decide upon their fate. If one accepts death peacefully, without resisting, they are granted a swift arrow from the lamb, which pierces their heart and ending without suffering. But if one thinks that he can escape death, they will be chased by the wolf, and finally go out brutally in pain. Pretty dark stuff, right? Here's a puppy to ease you up. Feeling better? Alright, let's continue. Before Kindred became how we know them today, meaning the wolf and the lamb, there was just one entity, called the Pale Man, who after some time of doing nothing but killing, became lonely. Shocker, right? So he got fed up, took an axe and split himself in the middle, creating the lamb and the wolf, the Kindred as we know him. Together, these two would accompany each other for the rest of times, always having a friend and never feeling lonely again.
Never one
without the other.
These two are like yin and yang, two sides of the same coin. One able to understand emotions, but unable to feel them, while the other feeling emotions without a clue what they mean. One being blind, while the other deaf. One killing quickly without grudges, while the other enjoying the hunt of its prey, feeding on fear installed on its victim. Both being polar opposites of each other, but ultimately being exactly the same. Kindred's story is, as you can see, pretty dark and haunting, but at the same time beautiful. When we forget about all that death stuff, the relationship between the two entities, their need for each other, and their interactions are quite heartwarming. So, how do you take all these different topics and encapsulate them into a musical piece? The theme was written by a French composer called Edward Bernesson. He actually wrote or took part in writing for many different League of Legends champions, such as Pantheon, Pyke or Jhin for example. He also helped composing the 2019 World's Anthem called Phoenix. Aside from Riot Games, he worked on many other different projects, including Ice Drake theme from Call of Duty Mobile, or the Portugal map theme Esperança from Overwatch 2. With all these accomplishments under his belt, it is safe to say that he is a great composer. But what I think what Edward really excels in is the ability to capture very complex themes and personify all its aspects to his music. And this is the reason why he was a genius choice for composing Kindred's theme. The score begins with a 10-bar long intro that sets up the mood and prepares us for the arrival of the main theme. The first notes we hear is this interval of two notes in a high register of a piano. The notes are D and A, and the interval or the distance between these two notes is called a perfect fifth. Now let's quickly sneak a peek into a music theory. I will try to keep it as simple as possible, I promise. There exists many types of chords, but the most popular, most used in Western music is a chord called triad. Every triad is made up of 3 notes. It has a root note, a note that the chord is called after, for example C. It has a fifth, a note that is 5 notes away from the root note on the given scale. And it has a third, a tone that is 3 notes away from the root note. The function of the third is to determine what quality the chord has. It can be major third, making the chord major, a happy, bright sounding chord. Or it can be minor third, making the chord minor, with a sad and solemn feel to it. Now let's tie this knowledge back to Bernesson's music. The note D is our root note, and the note A, being 5 notes away from the D, is our fifth. But we have our third missing. Without it, we cannot say whether the triad would be major or minor, whether it would be sounding happy or sad. Without a third, we cannot even call it a triad, because triad has to have 3 notes. Triad that has its third missing is what we call an open fifth. An open fifth has this humble yet really ominous feeling to it. We don't know what quality the chord possesses. This creates anticipation that quickly changes to nervousness and dreadfulness. An open fifth is one of the most haunting sounds you can create with music, and it's been used many times throughout history in that way. Example from classical music is Ravel's
Le gibet.
from a set of 3 pieces called
Gaspard de la Nuit.
a piece that describes a terrifying scene with a hanged man outside the city walls, with bells tolling in the distance. In the music, Ravel stacks 2 open fifths on top of each other. That, in addition to it being pretty dark sound already, adds dissonance, as the 2 open fifths clash with each other, creating truly unsettling atmosphere. An open fifth actually led to the creation of a new genre in music. You might have heard of it. It's called rock. In rock music, an open fifth has its own specific name. They call it a power chord. And in rock music, power chords are everywhere. Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water, or I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and Blackhearts. So by starting with this interval of an open fifth and a high register of a piano, Bernessen immediately creates this grim, uneasy atmosphere that is really associated with Kindred. At the end of the first bar, we are introduced to another important aspect of this composition, these fast-moving scale runs, with some occasional notes with longer duration. What's really interesting about this is the register that constantly switches in the melody. It really feels like 2 different melodies intertwining each other, one in this high register, second in this mid to low register, the former asking questions while the latter giving answers to them. This beautifully represents the 2 aspects of Kindred, the 2 entities having sort of a musical dialogue, while dancing and jumping around each other. At bar 8, the cello makes its first appearance, with this really simple melodic motif, landing on the note D, that is held on for another 2 bars, providing a low bass. This cello motif is gonna come back several times in the main section of the music, with slight adjustments. The introduction of the cello is stunning. Up until this point, we have only heard this quiet, gentle sound of a piano that is suddenly broken by this piercing, almost aggressive timbre of the violoncello, almost reminding us of all the danger that awaits, reminding us of our mortality, telling us who Kindred really are. At bar 9, the scale runs stop, as both hands playing the piano plays just the open fifths in different octaves. This acts as a musical pause, a moment to take a breath. In the next several bars, the scale runs reappear. We hear the cello theme again, this time an octave higher. And finally, in bar 13, we are introduced to the main melodic motif of the piece. This melodic theme is quite simple, lasting only 1 bar, although repeated for a second time with little adjustments. There are a few distinctive features to this motif. First, the triplets. Triplet is a group of 3 notes, played in time of 2 notes. Combine these melodic triplets with the accompaniment played in the left hand of a piano that's in standard rhythm, and it creates something called polyrhythm. Polyrhythm is created by 2 different rhythmical groups. In this case, it's 3 against 2 polyrhythm. 3 notes in the melody and 2 notes in the accompaniment that takes the same time to play. Another recognizable feature of this melody is its motion. The melody is really disjunct, meaning it makes a lot of leaps. It doesn't go from one note to the next closest one, but instead it skips over some notes. Mostly skipping over just one note, but occasionally making these large jumps like this one. This combined with the polyrhythm makes the melody pretty jumpy and carefree, almost playful. And when you combine that with the very dark accompaniment consisting of the low cello notes and the still going open fifths, it makes the melody seem pretty odd, really out of place. But I think that's exactly the point. In my opinion, this melodic motif belongs to the lamp. It fits her jumpy, kind of playful movement perfectly, and it also makes sense narratively. Does this seem scary to you? No, of course not. Lamp isn't scary at all. It's a really nice and cute animal. But in the context of Kindred, in the context of what Kindred represents, this cute little lamp all of a sudden becomes pretty haunting, right? Just as the melody, played by itself, seems pretty harmless, but in the musical context it becomes pretty uncanny and unsettling. Now I think it's a good time to talk about the tonality of the piece. The introduction of open fifths at the beginning establishes some kind of D chord, since D is a root note. We just don't know what quality the D chord has because of a missing third. But by the end of the first bar, we get those running scales, which include a note F natural, which complete our D triad, turning it into a D minor chord. And by the fact that this D minor chord stays throughout the whole opening section, we can safely say that we are in tonality of D minor. Alright, back to the score. Our melodic motif repeats for a second time, now with more things going on in the accompaniment. Also, the motif has some alteration in the second half, now reaching higher in pitch than before, and most importantly, instead of ending on a D note, it goes on for 2 additional bars. It instead picks up force with a crescendo, becomes louder with a forte marking. It also finally leaves the D minor tonality, going through some chromatic chords that really intensifies the music. Turning it into a local climax, ending this section on another open fifth, now spread across different registers, that slowly fades away into silence. Now for my favorite moment of the whole piece. After this climax, the music comes to a full stop. It becomes completely silent for a moment. Before... The cello emerges from the silence. It repeats the lamb motif almost note for note. Now the motif sounds much more menacing thanks to the low register of the cello. To me this feels like the wolf is now making its presence known, and him repeating the lamb theme really emphasizes the duality of the two characters. The cello solo ends with the simple cello motif, before it's once again joined by the piano with its open fifths. But they would only last for 2 bars. After that, we hear the lamb motif and the cello again, now much more like a reflection or an echo, with this insisting triplet rhythm accompaniment in the piano. And in the next bar, we begin our final climax that ends the whole piece. Everything we have heard before now accumulates. The open fifths in different registers of the piano, the running scales now being very chromatic, leaving its tonal center of D minor. Now those scale runs are also imitated by the cello. In the last few bars, we hear the lamb theme for the last time, played by the both instruments together. This beautifully represents that both the lamb and the wolf are just one single entity, split into 2 parts. It also nicely contrasts the beginning, where the 2 voices were having kind of an argument between each other. One asking questions,
How old are we, lamb?
while the other answering them.
Older than those whose footsteps are long vanished.
But now they join their voices together to make their one final statement.
The masks of the Kindred seek you!
All of this build-up leads to the final resolution. It all accumulates to this single note D, played across all spectrum of the register. This kind of hollow yet definite sound ending the whole music theme. But when you thought it's all over, in the last 2 bars, we get the cello theme again. And I think it perfectly underlines the meaning of Kindred. They are always there. You can never feel truly safe. They can come when you least expect it. You can do whatever you want. You can run, you can hide. But sooner or later, you will meet the Grim Reaper. In the end, everyone will meet Kindred. Music can say so much without the use of a single actual word. This piece of art is an amazing example of that. When you look closely, you can see the whole story of the character in this 2.5 minutes piece of music. The representation of death, reflected by the constant background emptiness, evoked by the hollow interval of an open fifth. The relationship of the 2 entities is explored deeply. Firstly, we see their differences, and there is sort of dialogue or an argument. in the introduction of the material, but in the end we see both of them united in the final melodic statement. The music is intimidating, yet beautiful at the same time. The premise of Kindred is really scary, but it contains elements of tragedy and friendship. The tale of Kindred, the way the story is put together, is fascinating, and the music that reflects that is utter perfection. As I said earlier, Edward Brennesson has worked on a few other League champions, which will be the topics of my next videos. If you like this deep exploration or study of a character in music, please consider subscribing, liking the video and sharing it with your friends. As already hinted, my next videos will cover the theme music of these 3 champions. I also plan on covering music of different games than just League of Legends, and in the future I'm also looking forward to cover some TV shows and movies music, because it's a slightly different approach to film music than to a video game music, and there is a lot to explore. So if you don't want to miss any of that, click the bell button so you are up to date with all my uploads. With that out of the way, I thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. See you later.